Welcome everyone to our rate limits tech talk. This is our fourth messaging related webinar. I'm super excited today to be rejoined actually. It's the second time I've done a webinar with him. Danilo, the Italian stallion Smaldoni. He's one of our experienced field engineers. You may remember him from our previous tech talk on SMS in the USA. And also today, the man behind the curtain himself, Barry Reynolds, our technical product manager and magician for all things messaging. And today, Barry and Danilo are going to be talking to you about a topic I get a ton of questions about, which is rate limits. What are they? How do they work? How do we think about them? And how to get the highest rate limit possible? So I'm about to hand over to Barry, and he's going to get straight into the nitty-gritty, and he'll go through rate limits at a high level, and then he'll talk about 10DLC specifically, followed by toll-free shortcode and alphanumeric. And then Danilo will look into some common questions that we get around this topic before we have some time for Q&A. As always, post your questions in the Q&A section or in the chat, and I will do my best to make sure that if we haven't covered it in the content in the main slides, that we'll get to do it in the Q&A. So without any further ado, I will pass over to Mr. Reynolds.
Hey folks. Okay, so why do rate limits matter to begin with? So rate limiting is in place both on the Telnyx platform and in the messaging ecosystem as a whole for the critical life path of a message. And there's really two sides of the coin to think about. So the technical side, on the next slide, we have the Telnyx HTTP/SMTP APIs and the SLAs that come with them. So we need to ensure as a platform that we're maintaining a performing API for all users availing of our services. So here's some examples of acceptable performance under extended periods of heavy loads, such as the last election season that we just went through. So it's really important to us that under significant load due to certain users or certain days which may warrant more traffic, no user is impacted with their day-to-day operations. So then we have downstream capacity. So while Telnyx services auto scales with you as traffic goes up or down, the operators don't. And unfortunately, that dynamic isn't going to change anytime soon. And Telnyx only has a finite amount of capacity with these providers, especially with the likes of MMS being such a resource-intensive protocol. So it's imperative that we're ensuring that we're coordinating and planning capacity increases ahead of time with our partners based on factors such as natural traffic growth overall, or special customer requests with traffic that may be onboarding that requires significantly higher limits. And then we have just the limitations of the protocol itself or the protocols. So at the end of the day, these protocols don't behave the same way as we'd expect with, say, the likes of RCS. They're best effort protocols at the end of the day. So to expect perfect performance / deliverability, it's unrealistic, but of course, with the right approach, you can get pretty close. So taking an SMS limitation as an example, things can get pretty weird on the handset level if I send a message with 10 plus parts to a recipient. So issues can surprisingly range from partial delivery, non-delivery. I've even seen some handset OS issues such as freezing messaging applications, complete lockups of the OS for short periods of time, which, you know, seems pretty crazy in this day and age for that to happen, but it does. And that's why guardrails like that are in place. So TLDR, if you're sending a short novel, use MMS instead. At the end of the day, it's a glorified email, so it'll get sent out as one part. And aside from being technically more efficient for this case, it would work out to be far more economical for you only being charged for one part. And then we have the operational side of the coin. So the main thing here is protecting the end user by filtering messages based on velocity checks, which is also commonly referred to as flooding filters. So an extreme example would be you make a mistake in your campaign sending, or there's a loop in your application, and all of a sudden you're sending hundreds of messages to one particular recipient. So you'll quickly find after a couple of messages, all subsequent messages will just get blocked by this filter. And that's the protection in place for that end user. So at the end of the day, it's not a silver bullet for protecting the end user as well as spam as a prevention mechanism. We know it takes many different things that are constantly being updated to keep with the latest trends. Similarly, but to a lesser degree, this also protects the sender using the example I gave earlier. And also, if somehow your account got compromised and or you leaked your API key, which does happen, this prevents extreme costly damage from occurring because the malicious actor can't get out high volumes to begin with, and then we'll catch on, block messages, reach out to you accordingly. But then on the next slide, how do we think about rate limits? There are just a couple of tidbits I want to get into before we get into the weeds. So given the nature of the SMS protocol being short form and the fact that large messages get split up into multiple parts when being sent downstream and then being assembled at the handset level, all rate limiting is done or measured per part. So I say this because it's a common mistake for customers to throttle their sending based on the API requests made as opposed to the parts within a message. We also queue up to 4 hours worth of messages before rejection at the API level. So you could technically send over your defined rate limit and we will queue it up for you until we fill the queue. This is opposed to a hard limit you may find with your average API. So for example, if you have a level 2 verified account over SMS, you get 50 MPS, or rather 3,000 messages per minute, 180K per hour. If you do 180K by 4, we have a queue size of about 720K. So this is the amount of messages you can put in the queue at once before we'll start rejecting. So this is handy if you don't have full control over your sending habits. We'll do some of the legwork for you to an extent. So there are many types of rate limiting we measure on. When our outbound messaging services is processing a message request, it asks our limiter service, number one, if there's space in the queue to even accept this message to begin with and send, just what we referred to earlier, and two, when can we send this message to put in the queue appropriately to go downstream. So on the next slide, how are we thinking about rate limits as it relates to the Telnyx platform? So we have proactive limits in place on the account level. So this is to protect us and you as the user from fraud and ensuring adequate infrastructure resources to also maintain SLAs for everyone on the platform. So an example of this would be level 1 and level 2 verification, being a fraud prevention measure at the end of the day. So not alone does level 2 verification and providing you give more information to our NOC or sales team who verify these requests. So not alone do you get access to certain features which are commonly abused, you do get access to higher limits. So we have that, and then we have the general API limit. So this isn't something that's specific to the messaging services and our queuing mechanisms that we just talked about there. It's just a general API TPS limit. So you will have similar API limits across all of the endpoints on the Telnyx platform. And of course, they will vary depending on the service / usage. Then we get into the messaging specific limits further into our stack, which, as we mentioned, has queuing and it's measured per parse, not like your average API request will be at the edge. So for example, if you're level 2 verified, as we talked about, then you get this raised account limit of 50 MPS. It's unfortunately split by protocol because MMS is resource intensive and capacity is especially finite, both with Telnyx and the industry as a whole. So we have to give out a little less there and hold on to it a little bit more, unfortunately. Then we have the sender limits, which I'll get into in the subsequent slides. Okay, 10DLC, long codes. One, we treat unregistered traffic as P2P in nature, as do the carriers, albeit more harshly than us. We highly encourage you to register for 10DLC at the end of the day. You know, if you don't, there'll be significant financial penalties with ever increasing fees, operational burden as carriers increasingly won't entertain escalations surrounding unregistered traffic, and significantly more blocking, filtering. Anyways, 2, rate limiting is shifting towards being measured on the campaign ID level. This is opposed to the number level that we had previously. So the idea here being your campaign doesn't need multiple senders or long codes associated with it to avail of those higher limits. So I'll speak to the gotcha here in a sec, but for now, there's 2 types of limits that's defined to you via TCR. So we have the general TPS limits that we know, which is adopted by AT&T and Verizon. And then we have the daily volume limits that is adopted by T-Mobile. And of course, if you're not happy with said limits assigned to your campaign, external vetting is always advised on a brand, which can help you avail of higher limits. So the gotcha I was just referring to, there's still an untold sender limit, which is defined over MMS, again, in that vein of being a resource intensive protocol. They're not handing out this throughput to everybody. So I will preface that, first of all, this isn't defined via TCR. You won't actively see it there. And also, it doesn't make sense with the shift towards campaign limiting to do this, to still do this. And it's something we've spoke out against, and unfortunately it is what it is right now, so we'll have to work with it. But AT&T and T-Mobile, as we can see, have quite low limits per sender, which naturally forces you to add more senders to a campaign, which goes against the idea of 10DLC, really. And then we have T-Mobile, who also say on the other side that no, you can't have more than 49 numbers per campaign. So you can only get so much capacity through conventional means. It doesn't make sense, I know. However, providing you're okay with the fees and the time it takes for approval on a campaign, which can be weeks in some cases. So, you know, this campaign would want to be with you for quite a while. To get around this, you would submit a number pooling request, which removes the 49 number per campaign limit. And also, if you're doing very high volume, I would also advise getting a volume exception, which removes the 200K daily limit, which is conventionally assigned by T-Mobile for a campaign via TCR. So this is probably the highest limit that they'll assign, 200K, and this will help you circumvent that.
Talking about T-Mobile, I have a question from one of the audience, which I think is super relevant. The question is, isn't the T-Mobile daily volume limit per brand as opposed to campaign ID?
The T-Mobile, the volume exception. Sorry,
He's asking if you can go Danilo if you want.
No, so the general reply here is that in theory, the limitations are based on the brand tier, but of course, all the other limitations are happening, which means that you are limited at brand and then at campaign. So you are assigned a score, a tier better on your brand, and then at your campaign. And again, as Barry is reporting, is saying, there are some other limitations we should take in consideration.
Cool. Is that Barry? You were going to say something?
No. So
Cool.
I'll
Should we
move
continue
on if there's no other questions. So
Yeah.
rate limits as it pertains to just the general other products, the other offerings, so shortcode, alphanumeric, toll-free. There's technically no real industry limitations on these sender types explicitly. However, I will say that there is volume limitations that was recently introduced for toll-free numbers, which have not been verified or pending verification. So the only limits you'll really run into on these routes is the limits assigned to your account. And of course, back to that idea again, that we have a finite amount of downstream capacity. So if you need more, we'd have to coordinate downstream to ensure we have the necessary resources, as well as, we'll scale up accordingly or automatically. So should you need more, either reach out to support or your AM, who will field this request to the messaging team and myself for review, and we can work with you as necessary. So that's it. I'm going to hand this over to Danilo to talk about some common questions.
Yep. And again, if you have questions of your own, like the person just there, feel free to post them now and we'll try to cover them off as we go. Danilo.
Okay. Thanks, Barry. Thanks, Simon. So yeah, mainly what are the questions we are receiving here, of course, related to this topic is what are and how can I change, or how do I know what are my account rate limit, my number limit? And another, let's say, common question is also related to the fact that is it possible to set my rate limit for some kind of fraud, abuse control? Of course, all of this information are available on our mission control portal. If you go there in the dedicated section, messaging and programmable messaging, you will see that by default, your account rate limit, which means whatever is under your account is limited to 3,000 messages per minute. And whatever is related to your single number account, of course, considering the service you are using, because Barry was talking about long code, and then you have to register to TenDLC if you want to send through the TenDLC, and then in that case, the rate limit depends on the score you are assigned. But generally speaking, without anything, without any registration, the long code is 10 messages per minute per number. If you want, we can also tell you that 1,200 is the limit for toll-free, speaking about messaging per minute, but then you can also scale up to, I don't know, 120,000 for short code. And in case of alphanumeric sender, which is not the case of the United States, but in other countries, you can scale up to 60,000 messages per minute.
And just to add to this, those limitations is purely based on our vendor resources. So there's no real limitations as it relates to the industry, but it's just there to protect overall capacity and all other users. If you need more, we'll work with you.
And one more thing I want to add is about the manually set rate limit, the second one we are exposing here. Again, the limit are, as we just reported and very restated, are by vendor, but we have our limit on our platform. You can ask to modify them up to the capability, asking the sales of, and on your side, as a suggestion, you can also rate limit this with your application if you need it and you want to be kind of flexible up to our limits.
Cool. Someone asked in the audience, will a toll-free number work before registration?
The answer is yes, it will, but I would only advise that you use the toll-free number really in a testing capacity as opposed to production traffic if you intend on doing big volumes. So there's limitations, and we can send over the documentation to anyone that requests it after this, but there's the limitations on, say, pending toll-free numbers of about 10K messages per month you will get away with. But if you go beyond that, there will be throttling and or filtering that happens on that traffic until it's verified. And of course, if you need the toll-free number to get verified right away, we can expedite those verification requests. So yes, it works, but it's filtered and rate limited accordingly.
Cool. Danilo, you talked about manually setting your rate limit, didn't you? Or
yes, I talked about this.
Okay.
I just wanted to add because of the effort of Barry and the team, the toll-free verification API will speed up the process of having your toll-free number registered and verified. So, and we are, like top player from this point of view, no?
Yeah. That verification API, I don't know if it's still the case, but last I checked, which was about a month ago, I believe that we were the only vendor that actually had major vendor that had a bulk toll-free number verification API, so you could fire off, like a bunch of requests at once. And as long as you had enough, that there is a limit of how many toll-free numbers you can have. I think it's per business entity or something like that. As long as you're within that, you can fire as many toll-free verification number requests as you want. And just while I'm talking about toll-free verification requests, someone asks, is there a specific department that can help expedite toll-free verification requests? I don't know if they can expedite it from what I've heard. Probably Barry can speak better to this. But we do have a fair number, like there is a bit of a delay in the industry at the moment. It's not us, but definitely you can talk to support about it.
There is a path to escalation there. So I would say if you don't have an AM, send a request into support to see what you can do about expediting the request. If you're going to be sending over 10K SMS a month, that's the requirement for escalation. If you have an AM, field a request through there, and then we'll get it verified. Once something is escalated, we can get it generally done between 1 to 3 business days. Of course, this is an ever-changing landscape. It's fast moving, so those SLAs may go up or down dependent on the volume of requests. And again, it's unfortunately not in Telnyx's control. It's downstream.
Cool. Okay, I've got another one about toll-free numbers. Actually, there's a couple I'm just going to get through that are earlier. One of them, that page that you mentioned, I think it was about rate limits. Danilo, someone's actually asked you to send over the link. If you've got that on your screen, you could, if you go to the question and answer section, Danilo, you could actually post it there.
Okay.
I've got another question asking about number porting. We ported over toll-free numbers. They don't seem to send any SMS. Support said they won't work. I'm not sure if that's a question. I'm assuming it pertains to an issue around number porting for toll-free numbers.
Thomas, email me barry@telnyx.com and we can talk from there. I'll review the case.
Yeah. I know we've just updated our number porting API as well. So it should be a smoother process. if you're moving over an existing number, and especially a US-based one. What else have we got? Another question. Whoa, okay, interesting. TCR had mentioned that $25 to $100 fees can be waived by T-Mobile. Can this be done, and have they given exemption if it is low volume P2P traffic?
So I think you're kind of referring to two things here. So the $2,500 fee as it relates to the volume exception, or rather the number pooling, and then P2P, it's another bracket. But so what I think you're getting at is there a path to get recognized as P2P to avoid 10DLC fees in general? That's what I'll take it as. And yes, there is. There is a specific form to fill out in which you will outline your use case details and how you view yourself as being P2P in nature. And it's something that you can either reach out to support or field through your AM. But if you get approved to be recognized as P2P, Telnyx can take your account ID and we will whitelist you to have P2P routing. And what that does is removes the need for 10DLC registration, and also completely removes any carrier pass-through fees. Now, you might be thinking to yourself, oh my God, this is the best thing ever, but I will say that it is next to impossible, or rather very hard to get approved on these P2P routes, and intentionally so. Yeah, that's a process that you can go through. And you will find on the form itself that the first 3 questions will quickly lead you to realize that you may not qualify, because it's intentionally done to have you fail, rather.
Cool. Before I get to the last, I see there's still more questions, and I know we've got 30 minutes, so I'll just quick word from our sponsors before we do those last couple of questions. A word from our sponsors, but just some important links anyway. Definitely recommend you get over to developers.telnyx.com. The customers that I've seen have by far the best experience and get the most done on our platform. They're using the dev docs. There's a GitHub repo, there's a resource center, and then of course you can go to support.telnyx.com. And also, of course, don't forget you can go to telnyx.com/contact us to get in touch. And then we'll get back to questions. So someone asked, is there a way to assign individual numbers to the campaign without using messaging profiles? It was possible before. I don't see that option now.
Yes, there is. If I can see about linking you to it while we're here. But there is. I'll see, can I grab this before we expand here?
Cool. While Barry's looking at that, someone asked, is it easier to get numbers verified through the API than from the interface where we would usually do it? I guess that depends if you're a dev or not, to a degree. I'll let Danilo give an answer on that.
And I guess this is also related to toll-free, talking about verification. So talking about verification, the portal, the thing, what you see on the portal is kind of hiding or masquerading the API, which is running in the background and which is doing the same you can do calling the API directly. So it's easier. It depends on the ability to code, I would say. The process is the same once the request is sent.
Cool. So that one we've just covered off. Covered now. And then I see we're coming up on time. More questions about toll-free number porting. I would say for that person, I think I've sent you Barry's email. It's barry@telnyx.com. Or you can jump on the site and go to contact us. I know from what I've seen that number porting is definitely something that can require a little bit more attention, especially if you're moving over a large amount of numbers. We've come up on time, so I don't see any other burning questions. If you do have questions, or you just want to talk to Barry or Danilo, because they're nice guys, you can jump on telnyx.com/contact us, and one of the team will try to help you out. If you're looking for a recording, I'll organize for this to be sent out in the coming days. And we look forward to seeing what you guys do with the platform.